pleasant day everyone. I am Jay Miguel Siwakin from BSTM 1A. We are the Group 4 and we are here to discuss the Module 3 Lesson 12. Taking charge of oneself, I am in control. Group 4 members are Joaquin J. Miguel, Austria Lucille, Brucey Yvette, Chica Hannah, Evangelista Nicole Ann, Garcia Jacqueline, Heneta Miles, Manipul Hart, and Salcedo Julia Paula. Before we start the discussion, I request everyone to listen carefully and you can get paper and pen so that you can take note of some important details that we are going to discuss. Let's start the discussion with this quotation by Hans Selye. It's not stress that kills us, it is our reaction to it. This is true because we all recognize that stress is simply a part of our everyday life, but that we all respond to or experience it will be different from one another because some people are just naturally more sensitive or reactive to stress. In line with this, what may be stressful to you might not be stressful to others. Most of the time, it's really just a matter of perspective or a matter of properly responding. A lot of us may be guilty of easily and overly reacting to news heard or an event witnessed, which may lead to overthinking or misunderstanding others that then could result to stress. People react differently to stressful situations. What is stressful for one person may not be stressful for another, and almost any event can potentially cause stress. For some people, just thinking about a trigger or several smaller triggers can also cause stress. With that, James differentiated the reaction and response. He stated that reaction is driven by the beliefs, biases, and prejudices of unconscious mind. On the other hand, a response is based on information from both conscious and unconscious mind. What James is trying to say here is that our reaction and response may result in positive or negative outcomes because right after we react to certain things, our response will always be depends on our reaction. Knowing and understanding what we are dealing with and responding accordingly could help us and the people near to us live less stressful lives. This may be easier said than done since old habits are hard to break, but still they can be unlearned and for us to learn better way of handling the thing we call stress. What usually comes to mind when we hear the word stress? Most often than not, we associated stress with negative and unpleasant things, right? Seward even mentioned that stress and change have become synonymous because change coming from academic, personal, romantic, health, and or financial aspect of our lives can indubitably bring about stress. So, what is stress? Stress is the experience of a perceived threat, real or imagined, to one's mental, physical, or spiritual well-being resulting from a series of psychological responses and adaptations. However, stress may not be negative at all times. That will lead us to understand the three types of stress. Three types of stress are eustress, eustress, and distress. First, we have the eustress. A good stress and a stressor that motivates an individual toward an optimal level of performance or health. Eustress are smaller challenges, just like for example, the excitement of roller coaster ride, a scary movie, or a fun challenge. Even a particular tough workout can be example of this type of stress. Also, new experiencing like travel can also create eustress. Next, we have the eustress. Any kind of information or sensory stimulus that is perceived as unimportant or inconsequential, neither positive nor negative. This second type of stress is also called neutral stress. This kind of stress occurs when you're exposed to situations that have no direct effect on you. For example, hearing about devastating natural disaster in another part of the world can create new stress. And lastly, we have the distress. Unfavorable or negative interpretation of an event, real or unimagined, to be threatening that promotes continued feeling or fear or anger, more commonly known simply as stress. The definition of distress is also suffering or pain or a state of being in trouble. An example of distress might be an injury that removes us from exercise, the death of loved ones, not getting into the college of our choice, or losing our job. These are the common things that we might associate with negative stress. Okay, so that's all for my part. Thank you for listening, and now giving the floor to Miss Austria Lucille to continue the discussion.
Thank you. So now let's proceed to the continuation of our discussion. Looking into the definition of stress and distress, we see the words perceived and interpretation. It is interesting and comforting to know that we have so much control over stress and distress, if only we have a keener and positive way of perceiving and interpreting things. When we say perceived, we mean become aware of or conscious of something, realize or comprehend. His mouth fell open as he realized the truth, for example. On the other hand, when we say interpreting, we mean giving or providing the meaning of a parable's hidden meaning. It is also good to know that there is a positive type of stress that acts like a blessing in disguise. This may be a perceived threat, but we would be able to use it to our advantage, serving as an encouragement and opportunity to learn and persevere. Positive stress, also known as good stress, is the type of stress that we experience when we are excited. Positive stress can also refer to instances when you respond well to a challenge posed by a stressor. An upcoming wedding, the holidays, or pregnancy can all be positive stressors. According to Passer and Smith, 2007, the process of perceiving and interpreting a stimulus thing, change, event, and people is known as cognitive appraisal, which is a type of a stress response. Our ability and the quality of our cognitive appraisal is dependent on our beliefs, culture, desires, expectations, values, etc. There are two steps in cognitive appraisal. The first one is the primary and the second one is the secondary. Primary appraisal is the initial evaluation of a stimulus and categorizing it as either positive, negative, or neutral, according to Wheaton, 2014. Secondary appraisal is the evaluation of our perceived ability to cope with the situation, that is the resources you have to deal with it, according to Passer and Smith, 2007. The process of analyzing an encounter and its various aspects in terms of their significance for well-being is known as cognitive appraisal. According to this perspective, cognitive appraisals occurred after the felt emotion has passed, that is, after physiological and behavioral changes. For example, we might hear a gunshot and feel scared, followed by cognitive assessments of unexpectedness and the ability to cope. Figure 2. Primary and Secondary Appraisal by Seward, 2018. Stimulus, stressor, perceive, recalled, imagine. A high-stress job, overcrowding, and long commutes to work are examples of stress. As a demanding or threatening event or situation, stress is characterized as a stimulus that causes specific reactions in such conceptualizations, which are known as stimulus-based definitions. A stressor is a stimulus or threat that causes stress, such as an exam, divorce, the death of a loved one, relocating, or losing a job. Primary appraisal. We have two types of stress in primary appraisal: the eustress and eustress. Eustress, also known as good stress, is any stressor that drives a person to achieve their highest level of performance or health. Neutral stress, on the other hand, is an information or sensory stimulus that is perceived as unimportant or insignificant. A challenging work assignment that is perceived as neither too difficult nor too easy is an example of eustress. A strength training workout is another example. Eustress or neutral stress is the second type of stress. When you're exposed to situations that have no direct impact on you, you'll experience this type of stress. For example, hearing about devastating natural disaster in another part of the world can create new stress. The next one is the distress or stress. Stress is not inherently good or bad, and it can take three forms: eustress, the good one; neutral stress, the neutral; and distress, the bad one. However, when we talk about stress, we usually mean distress. Distress, on the other hand, is a type of negative stress that we most commonly associate with it. Stress and distress are two distinct concepts that refer to an animal's ability or inability to cope with and adapt to changes in its immediate environment and experience. Stress responses are natural responses to external or internal disturbances that can be considered adaptive. When stress is severe, prolonged, or both, it causes distress. Stress and distress differ from welfare in that an adaptive and beneficial stress response can occur despite a transient negative emotional state. Both stress and distress are potential complications in a wide range of experiments, and good experiment design should address them ahead of time. The next one is the secondary appraisal. We assess our existing coping resources. Example given, how healthy we are, how much energy we have, whether family and friends can help our ability to rise the challenge, and how much money or equipment we have. Our available options and our options for controlling our situation in secondary appraisal. Secondary appraisal is a cognitive process that occurs when a person is attempting to cope with a stressful situation. A person decides what coping options are available during this process. The next one is the coping resources adequate and the coping resources inadequate. Coping mechanisms are as diverse as the stressors that preceded them. Accepting the situation or one's role in it, active or confrontive coping to remove the stressor or oneself from the stressor, anticipatory coping aimed at an expected but uncontrollable event, avoiding or escaping the stressor or associated feelings of distress, denying the problem or feelings, disengaging mentally or behaviorally, or giving up, distancing or detaching from the situation or minimizing its significance are some common strategies or categories for coping responses. However, not all coping mechanisms are created equal. It can be tempting to engage in strategies that provide immediate relief but may cause you more problems in the long run. It's critical to develop healthy coping skills that will assist you in reducing emotional distress or escaping stressful situations. Problem-based coping and emotional-based coping are the two main types of coping skills. Understanding how they differ can assist you in determining the most appropriate coping strategy for you. Problem-based coping can help you when you need to change your situation, such as by removing a stressful thing from your life. If you are in an unhealthy relationship, for example, ending the relationship may be the best way to relieve your anxiety and sadness as opposed to soothing your emotions. When you need to take care of your feelings but don't want to change your situation, or when circumstances are beyond your control. Emotion-based coping can help. If you are grieving the loss of a loved one, for example, it's critical to manage your emotions in a healthy way since you can't change the situation. There isn't always a single best course of action. Instead, you must decide which type of coping skills is most likely to help you in your particular situation. It's critical to build your own set of coping skills that you'll find useful. To figure out which coping strategies work best for you, you may need to try a few different ones. Healthy coping skills can help you avoid distress and address problems before they escalate. You can better select strategies that are suited to different types of stress if you understand the two main types of coping skills. Talking to a mental health professional can help if you are having trouble practicing healthy coping skills or find yourself relying on unhealthy ones instead. A therapist can help you develop new skills that will benefit your mental health in the long run. And now, I am giving the floor to Miss Yvette Bruce to continue our discussion.
Good day, my name is Yvette Christia S. Bruce and I will present to you what is stressors. A stressor is any real or imagined situation, circumstances, or stimulus that is perceived to be a threat by Seward 2018. Grasping the given definition, it shows how powerful our mind really is and how influential our beliefs and values are. It seems silly that an imagined stimulus may cause so much damage. We might have been guilty or a victim of these imagined threats too many times before or even currently. Our fears may really be always bigger than the thing itself. Made-believe thoughts may have paralyzed us in doing what could have been a great opportunity or experience. A stressor is a stressful occurrence or a circumstance. Anything that can be a source of stress is seen as a threat. A stressor is a chemical or biological agent, environment, state, external stimulation, or event that cause an organism to become stressed. A stressor can be events or surroundings that individuals perceive as demanding, challenging, and hazardous to their safety. Anything that includes the release of stress hormones is referred to as a stressor. A stressor is anything that throws off the body's elastic balance, and the stress response is the body's attempt to restore it. Life stressors include severe life crises and tragedies and ongoing stressors. Psychological stress reactions such as depression and anxiety are linked to life stressors. Stressors exposure also triggers a biological response that has been linked to the beginning or worsening of a variety of medical ailments. Early stress research focused on the direct harmful impact of stresses on mental and physical health, ignoring individuals' difference in response. Seward 2018 stated that the list of stressors is not only endless but also varies from person to person. But as explained in so many psychology books and studies, we are in control only if we choose to be. We all have various pressures because everyone has their own set of resources, understanding of the world, and manner of experiencing things. What one individual perceives as a threat, another perceives as a challenge. These distinctions might sometimes go unnoticed. It may not occur to you that a trip to the mall would be stressful, but for someone who despises crowds and shopping, an afternoon at the mall can be highly stressful. Even someone who enjoys shopping but is introverted can be stressed out by a long shopping trip that would be pleasurable or even exhilarating for a strong extrovert. You might even be one of those who despise crowds and don't realize why they are anxious after a shopping excursion. Cataclysmic events. Strong stressors occur suddenly may affect many people simultaneously. Disasters such as tornadoes, plane crashes, natural or man-made calamity. Cataclysmic event drastically alters a situation or civilization, often in a negative way. A cataclysm is a disaster or a large-scale, generally violent occurrence that produces disruptions or change. Cataclysmic events are severe stressors that strike unexpectedly and afflict many individuals at the same time. Tornadoes, plane accidents, and terrorist strikes are all instances of cataclysmic occurrence that can affect hundreds or thousands of people simultaneously. Personal stressors. Major life events, death of a parent or spouse, loss of one's job, major personal failure, even something positive like getting married. Significant life events such as the death of a close relative or the loss of a job are examples of personal stressors. These stressors usually cause a strong first reaction that gradually fades. Some victims of extreme personal stressors, on the other hand, develop long-term post-traumatic stress disorder, which manifests as a flashbacks, nightmares, and other symptoms. Personal stressors are events or circumstances in a person's life that may hurt the individual's health or well-being or family. Stressors can be experienced directly, such as when you are diagnosed with a significant illness, or indirectly when a family member is diagnosed with severe disease. Background stressors. Daily hassles, minor irritations in life, standing in a long line at a bank, getting stuck in a traffic jam, long-term chronic problem dissatisfaction with school or job, and unhappy relationship. Background stressors are recurring and persistent experiences that might become part of our daily routine. The health effects of such stressors are chronic rather than acute, and they occur over time rather than in a short period of time. Background stressors are little annoyances, such as being stuck in traffic, that can have long-term negative consequences if they continue or are exacerbated by other stressful situations. That's all. Thank you for listening. The next reporter will be Miss Hannah Elena Chica.
Responses to stress. Figure 4, level of responses to stress. Figure 5, general adaptation syndrome. Figure 6, stress level by generation and gender. Responses to stress. Figure 4, level of responses to stress. How do we respond to stress? Usually, the body begins to react before a full analysis of the situation is made, but a return of a state of calm is also imminent. There are 3 general levels each of us responds to stress: emotional, psychological, and behavioral. Emotional. There are different kinds of emotion: annoyance, anger, anxiety, fear, rejection, grief, guilt, shame, envy, and disgust. Powerful and largely uncontrollable feelings accompanied by the psychological changes. Psychological. Hormonal fluctuation and neurochemical changes. There are different kinds of psychological: anxiety, memory loss, brain fog, worry, sleep disorder, mild serious illness. Fight or flight response, a psychological reaction to threat that mobilizes an organism for attacking, fight, or fleeing like an enemy. And last, behavioral. Lashing out at others, blaming oneself, seeking help, solving problems. Responses to stress. Figure 5, general adaptation syndrome. According to Celia, the way that our body responds to stress is called general adaptation syndrome. There are 3 stages: 1, alarm; 2, resistance; and 3, exhaustion. Alarm. Trigger stress hormones, heart rate, blood pressure, even sugar level increases. Fight or flight response. Second, resistance. Body tries to counteract the alarm stage. Body tries to normalize, struggling to concentrate and may be irritable. Exhaustion. Body is tired of fighting stress, tiredness, depression, anxiety, feeling unable to cope.
Good day everyone! I am Nicola Evangelista, and before I start my discussion, I would like to share the line I saw on the internet. Breaks is an opportunity to step off the treadmill of life and check in with ourselves. It might feel easier to stay on the treadmill, but ultimately, a life lived at constant breakneck speed is less fulfilling. Whenever we perceive a stressor, our body is alerted and we react or respond depending on the ways we are enculturated, exposed to, or educated. After sometimes we get tired of resisting or struggling, however, feeling of exhaustion does not mean of giving up but merely taking the necessary rest or break for the self to regain energy and motivation to face and overcome the challenges. People have a lot of stress that most of the time they don't even know how much is affecting them. Stress has affected people in a hamper way throughout time. It is identified when the individual passes through a certain tragedy or uncomfortable moment in their life. The body can automatically identify the situation of the person is going through, either threatening or non-threatening to them, and stress can either affect them for a long term or short amount of time. We all know that life is stressful.
from daily stressors like bills, work, and relationship, to the bigger ones like losing a job, moving to a new house, or coping with an illness can all affect the way our body works. That's why rest or breaks have been found to be particularly beneficial. And reminder, taking a break is not about being lazy, but about being courageous. It's a courage to stop doing the familiar for the unknown and trust that everything will work out fine. It opens up your creativity, helps to reinvent yourself, and rejuvenates you emotionally, physically, and spiritually. If you approach a break fearlessly, you have oodles of fun and new possibilities in life. The American Institute of Stress cites the following statistics: 43% of all adults suffer adverse health effects due to stress. 80% of all visits primary care physician are for stress-related complaints or disorder, such as allergy, common colds, headache, increase in blood pressure, or diarrhea by Seawards 2018. Stress not only affects our thoughts, feelings, and behavior, it also affects our health without even realizing it. Constant headache or trouble sleeping will be something stress causes often. This can lead also to the serious health problem because individuals will react in the different ways. Some may react very anxious, heart rate goes faster, their blood pressure rises, breathing is much heavier, and the muscle is tightened up. Stress can get bad enough when it starts affecting our body system. As I mentioned earlier, things like depression, heart attack, disease, rashes, and a low immune system can all occur to the people dealing with stress bad enough. Some stress factors depends on the person's age, gender, or personality. This graph shows that the average stress level in two different criteria. The first graph are by generation and is led by millennials followed by Gen X, third one is boomers, and lastly is matures. I think millennial has the higher average than the other generation because of their high expectation in life. Whether this expectation came from themselves or overbearing parents, millennials experience a lot of pressure to succeed. Success looks different for everyone, but it's not out of bounds to say many view it as home owning, being financially stable, and establishing a family. The second graph is by gender, showing that female has the higher average stress level than male with 4 gaps. Women have a completely different hormonal system, causes them to react more emotionally and become more exhausted on emotional level. Many also say that the most common cause of stress for women is workplace. Sources of coping and strength. When we are faced with stress, we need to deal with it by coping well. Coping refers to the effort to master, reduce, or tolerate the demands created by stress, by Wheaton 2014. However, due to circumstances or influences, one's coping strategies may be positive or negative. Coping with stress can be easy. It depends on the person's handling it, and always remember that you only have to pass through it. You don't need to stay with it. And by dealing your stressors several times, you will learn how to master handling it. These are the example of negative or counterproductive coping strategies that we may have been guilty. Number 1 is giving up. Feels like there's no one for you. Number 2 is acting aggressively, can lead to do bad things like hurting someone or breaking something. Number 3 is indulging yourself, may lead to financial problem because of excessive buying. Number 4 is blaming yourself, can lead to loss of motivation, or worse, can lead to suicide. Lastly is defense mechanism. It is avoiding problems and not solving them. So before I end my discussion, I would like you to know that everyone deserves a break. Either short or long break, it can be a valuable way to feel restored and refreshed. Protect your health and your well-being. So now I will giving the floor to Ms. Jacqueline Garcia. Thank you for listening.
Table 1. Common Defense Mechanics, Wheaton et al. 2014. 6 defense mechanisms and its examples. First, repression. Keeping distressing thoughts and feelings buried in the unconscious. Example, traumatized soldier with no recollection of details of a close encounter with death. Repression is unwanted mental contents are pushed into the unconscious mind, frequently involving sexual or aggressive urges or sad childhood memories. When a forbidden desire or urge threatens to enter the conscious mind, repression is thought to cause anxiety and neurotic symptoms. Projection, attributing one's own thoughts, feelings, or motives to another person. Example, a student who dislikes his teacher but tries to think he likes her and feels that it is the teacher who does not like him. Projection is a mental process by which people assign to others what they are thinking about themselves. Self-critical persons, for example, may believe that others are criticizing them, whether intentionally or unconsciously. Displacement, diverting emotions, usually anger, from the original source to a substitute target. Example, after being shouted by her dad, she takes her anger on her little brother. Displacement is a psychological protection strategy in which a person focuses a bad emotion away from its source and toward a less dangerous target. Displaced aggression is a classic example of defense. Regression, reversion to immature pattern of behavior. Example, an adult throwing a tantrum. Regression is a type of retreat that allows a person to mentally return to a moment when they felt more secure. Rationalization, creation of false but plausible excuses to justify unacceptable behavior. Example, a student watching TV instead of studying and saying that additional TV wouldn't help anyway. Rationalization is an ego defense strategy in which apparent logical justifications are presented to justify behavior that is motivated by unconscious innate drives. And the last one is identification, bolstering self-esteem by forming an imaginary or real alliance with some person or group. Example, an insecure teenager joins a fraternity to boost his self-esteem. Identification is an ego defense or mental mechanism in which a person, to varied degrees, transforms himself into another person. He identifies with another person. Figure 7. Constructive Coping Tactics, Way 10, 2014. Constructive coping tactics has three strategies, which are the appraisal-focused strategies, problem-focused strategies, and emotion-focused strategies. Problem-focused strategies: active problem-solving, seeking social support, enhancing time management, improving self-control, and becoming more assertive. Lastly, emotion-focused strategies: releasing pent-up emotions, distracting oneself, managing hostile feelings, meditating, using systematic relaxation. The appraisal-focused tactics rely on our ability to honestly notice and focus on the good in everyone and everything. Problem-solving solutions focus on confronting the stressor head-on with the tools that we already have. Emotion-focused techniques recognize the importance of being aware of and able to process our feelings about a stress. It is extremely recommended that you use the three categories of constructive coping strategies to overcome stress. And now, I will give the floor to Ms. Miles Heneta.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Hello, good day, everyone. I am Miles, and now, to continue with that, let me start it with a quote from Kelly McGonigal. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress. Well, McGonigal goes on to argue the studies have established that your physical stress responses, which include things like heavy breathing, perspiration, palpitation, and so on, are just your body enabling you to rise to the occasions. And having an optimistic mindset is also helpful in dealing with stress because, according to Wayton 2014, optimism is a general tendency to expect good outcomes. We have to take note of the word general in the definition because being optimistic does not mean that being able to think of the bad things. It just means choosing not to focus on it. So there are numerous studies across the years have proven that optimism has a significant correlation with mental health and physical well-being. First is from Peterson Seligman, 1987, as cited in Passer and Smith, 2007, that optimists had about half as many infectious illness and visits to doctors as did pessimists. Second is from Chang of 1998, found that the people with optimistic belief felt less helpless in the face of stress and adjusted better to negative life events than did pessimists, as cited also in Passer Ismi 2007. And the third one, optimistic people are at lower risk of anxiety and depression when confronted with stressful events, and that is according to Passer Smith 2007. Well, lastly, from Conversano et al. Of 2007, saying that optimism may significantly influence mental and physical well-being by the promotion of a healthy lifestyle as well as by the adaptive behaviors and cognitive responses associated with greater flexibility, problem solving, and a more efficient elaboration of negative information. The positive thinking that usually comes with optimism is a key part of effective stress management. And effective management is associated with many health benefits. So if you tend to be pessimistic, don't despair. You can learn positive thinking skills. An optimistic person thinks that the best possible thing will happen and hopes for it even if it's not likely. Someone who's a tad too confident with the way is also sometimes called optimistic. Moving on to the next topic, which is the stress and Filipinos, the social and cultural dimensions of stress. By now, we already have an understanding that what we consider stressful is subjective and dependent on our perspective, which is highly influenced by our social and cultural experiences. That is according to Waithen 2014. Astan of 2006 puts it, not enough is being done to understanding stress in its local context, yet stress is mediated through culture. From the very nature of the stressors to the ways we respond to the stress. This challenged us to conduct research about stress in the Philippines in various contexts and population respondents. With this, we would be able to contribute in helping ourselves and our fellow men to combat and manage stress better with strategies or solution tailored fit for our Filipinos. And what we Filipinos may consider stressful may not be stressful to other cultures and vice versa. This may be experienced with our encounter with tourists, like international guests, relatives who grew up in other cultures, international peers, friends, colleagues, or by visiting or working in different countries. And according to Tan of 2006, that one of our Filipino culture's behavior is that we get too attached to home and how that we even have a term namamahay or missing home to describe a range of symptoms from insomnia to constipation that plagues on when we are away from home. Maybe some of you guys probably experience this kind of feeling when you are away from your home. For a little example, like peeing, I have experienced this a lot with my friends that they couldn't use the bathroom dahil nga namamahay. At first, I am very curious, pero you know it when they badly want to use bathroom pero dahil nga namamahay or they're not comfortable sa lugar na yon, napipigilan nila yon. Anyway, that is all. So now, let me have a permission to pass the floor to Manipul Heart to continue the report. Thank you.
I'm Heart Manipol and now I'm discussing taking care of self. We cannot give what we do not have, an old adage that makes such relevant sense in most, if not all, aspects of our life. We have to learn how to take care of ourselves before we cannot properly take care of others. When you choose yourself or honor yourself is the one most of the best and most beautiful things that you can do for your mind and soul. Thinking about whether others will do that for you will only drain your emotional energy and disturb your mental peace, so always choose yourself first. Every July 24 starting 2012 is regarded as the International Self-Care Day, or ISD, who defines self-care as what people do for themselves to establish and maintain health and to prevent and deal with illness. And there are the 7 pillars of self-care are: first, health literacy, basic health information, appropriate health decision, or a person's ability to receive, absorb, and comprehend essential health information and services required to make sound health decisions. And second, self-awareness of physical and mental condition. Includes knowing your body mass index or BMI, or cholesterol level, blood pressure, and engaging in health screening. And third, physical activity. Practicing moderate intensity and physical activity. Physical activity is practicing such as walking, cycling, or participating in sports at a desirable frequency. Or physical activity is any body movement that works your muscle and requires more energy than resting. Walking, running, dancing, swimming, yoga, and gardening, so on and so forth. And a few examples of physical activity. And now, your turn, Miss Julia Salcedo.
Once again, a pleasant good morning to everyone. I'm Julia Paula R. Salcedo, and now I'll be discussing the last topic in Module 12, which is the taking care of self. And the fourth one is healthy eating. This includes having nutritious, balanced diet with appropriate level of calorie intake. So the meaning of this is we should be conscious about the food we eat every day. If we practice to have a healthy eating habits, it will protect us against too many chronic diseases such as heart disease, high blood, cancer, and more. In our daily meal, we should include vegetable, fruits, and food with less salts and sugars. I know most of us loves to eat different foods like junk foods and street foods, but we should be mindful about what are the consequences if we keep doing to have a bad eating habits. And the fifth one is we have risk avoidance or mitigation. This includes quitting tobacco, limiting alcohol use, getting vaccinated, practicing safe sex, and using sunscreen. Avoiding high-risk behaviors, particularly tobacco smoking and alcohol intake, have been shown to significantly reduce preventable mortality and reduce all cause of mortality. Behaviors that can reduce health risks are often some of the most achievable self-care practices. And the sixth one is the good hygiene. This includes washing hands regularly, brushing teeth, and washing food. Having good personal hygiene is one of the best ways to protect ourselves from getting infectious diseases such as COVID-19 virus, colds, and fever. Practicing a good hygiene is the key and best way to take care of ourselves and making us good and clean, and will also prevent us from spreading diseases to other people. And the last one is we have the rational and responsible use of products and services, diagnostics, and medicines. For example, being aware of danger. The rational and responsible use of health products and services as part of self-care involves individuals safely and effectively. The correct use of health products and services are the tools of self-care and supporting health awareness and healthy practices. The 7 pillars of self-care is really a call to go back to the basics. Once more making realign and emphasizing the most of what we need is really already within us and within our reach. It's just up to us to be committed in consistently taking care of ourselves so we can win over stress and its potential negative effect to our physical and mental health. So here's the quote from Callie McGonigal, which is the caring for others and self creates resilience. Taking care of ourselves is holistic and foster hardiness, a disposition marked by commitment, challenge, and control that is associated with strong stress resistance. And finding meaning in stressful life events through positive spiritual beliefs also help us cope with stress better. So that is the end of our report about the taking charge of One Health. We hope that you learned something new from us.